It's 5 o'clock in Pirate Country, and it's time to get pumped up with the P-Man. Hit the door and hit the road. 94.3 The Game is going to get you home, and the P-Man's not holding back.
Yes! Yes! Pirates win! Pirates win!
Bring on the Patrick Johnson Show on 94.3 The Game.
Holy mackerel! Oh, my goodness!
The flagship station of the ECU Pirates.
Okay, welcome in. It's nice to have you with us here. Patrick Johnson Show, 94.3 The Game, and 94.3thegame.com, and the IBX Media app, audio and video. And John Gilbert with us here right off the jump, ECU Director of Athletics. How are you, John? Great to see you.
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Well, many places to start. If we talk the most recent kind of developments in Pirate athletics, a lot of them center around football, so that's probably a good place to start. National Signing Day today. We're going to hopefully hear from Steve and Igo in a little bit to kind of give us his assessment. Looks like, and I don't, the signing day recruiting, I'm not the devotee week in, week out, day in, day out, but from what I understand, it seems like not only did we get some flips, we also got some people to flip back who had opened up their recruitment again, and the recruiting overall seemed to be pretty strong. What's your assessment of it?
Well, it's really interesting to me how this day has evolved. Like I'm going back to my days at Alabama, and they were coming in by fax, and we had this whole camera on the fax machine. And,
right.
You know, we had this person that would, from the recruiting office, that would shoot it at this board, and everybody could see which faxes had come in and what players had committed. We certainly evolved a long way from those days. And you know, you don't really know till they get here and you know, start playing. So I know that our coaches are really happy with who we have committed, and naturally they're supposed to say that.
Right.
So we will wait and see.
When you are in this era of the portal and NIL, I still think there is a significant lifeblood in your program, especially somewhere like East Carolina, where you still have to be able to go out and have good classes on a day like today. You just can't go out and buy a team.
It's very difficult to do that.
Yeah.
You know, you look at Ohio State, you know, they have the highest, you know, probably the highest payroll in college football.
Yeah.
And they're not going to play in the Big Ten championship. Now, certainly there's a lot of football left for Ohio State. I think there has to be a balance of signing a young player, developing them, you know, creating a good culture and a good experience where they want to stay, and then supplementing them with portal kids or players. Because if you go strictly to the portal, you know, you can erode your culture overnight. And I think there's a balance between the two.
It is, when you hear culture, is that something that can be established or preserved today? Because, I mean, there is such roster turnover.
Yeah, I think you can preserve it where, you know, you have to have some foundational players that start in your program, grow and develop in your program, and understand what the expectations are and the standards. And then you bring in a bunch of players that, you know, are coming in from other programs where there's a different expectation and a different standard. And so I think there's got to be a thread there to kind of preserve that. And I think you can do that while still going to the portal and, you know, getting veteran players.
With football, and John Gilbert, ECU Director of Athletics, is with us here today on the show. The big question we're getting, among others, is the bowl game.
Yeah.
Any indication of where the Pirates might be headed?
Yeah, I still mentioned this last night in Harvey Hall before our basketball game. You know, the two that I'm hearing the most about are Military Bowl and Myrtle Beach.
Okay.
So Military Bowl would be an ACC team. Myrtle Beach would be Sunbelt or
At
MAC
11 in the morning.
At 11 in the morning. Military's on Saturday night, the 28th.
Right.
5:45 kick on ESPN. Both would be good and for a variety of reasons, and just happy we are in a bowl and being talked about this time of year.
Is there, would there be a preference? Because even somewhere as close as Myrtle Beach, that pre-Christmas bowl slot can be a little tough.
Yeah, it's I think either one works. The tough thing for our players and our coaches about military is they're spending Christmas in a hotel room.
Right. Yeah.
Because you're required to get there, 4 days before. So we probably, if military were the place that we were sent, we're getting there on Christmas Eve and
Yeah.
that's just part of it. Like there are a lot of teams that will be doing that. So we're open to where and who that is.
But nothing. Even though those are the ones you're prominently hearing, it could be anywhere. Yeah,
there is the bowl pecking order is, for the 8 slots that the American gets, it's a ESPN bowl, so they get the first pick. Then the military bowl gets the second pick, and then 3rd through 8 are ESPN picks. But there's also horse trading that goes on,
right.
like one bowl, like the Independence Bowl. I'm just picking a random bowl.
Right.
They may horse trade with someone else and say, hey, if you take them, let us have this team, and we'll work it out with each other in future years to
right.
create a better
yeah,
to create a better matchup. Those things always go on.
Mm-hmm.
And then, behind the scenes, there are always things in, mostly conferences are carrying the water on this, but if we're going to the Military Bowl and certain schools don't want to play us, they're telling their conference office, hey, we're hearing it's this school.
Right.
We do not want to play them. Send us.
Could that be happening?
I think that always happens.
Okay.
Now, I don't know if it's happening in this instance.
Gotcha.
But I would say in one of the many bowls and the 82 teams that will play in the bowl, that is certainly going on in multiple locations.
Yeah. When you have a situation like this, these both seem like they are travel-friendly bowls for not just fans, but also for the team. Is there an opportunity to turn a profit with either, just given proximity and that you're not having to fly?
Well, certainly I would say maybe not turn a profit, but break even.
Okay.
The expenditure when you take a full team on the road, and again, this is Christmas time, so not only this isn't a normal away trip, like
right.
you're taking families with you as well, so it can get quite expensive. So I would say the hope would be to break even.
Yeah, but those two present that opportunity based on payout,
yeah,
proximity,
absolutely,
and
yeah,
that sort of thing.
You have a better chance of breaking even when you can bus as opposed to hopping on a flight and going across country.
Right. When you look at the conference championship, which is coming up on Friday, and obviously East Carolina, since joining the American, has not made it to the championship game. Last time, Conference USA member. But an Army comes in, and they run the table in the league. And a lot of that is based on who you wind up playing and who you schedule. East Carolina probably was one of Army's toughest tests. Navy is a non-conference for them. Do you kind of marvel, though, that because you still have to play the games and win them, and that they got there, and that Tulane's been able to kind of keep it going through a coaching change?
Yeah, it's you look at what Army's done and how they've done it, and I think a lot of it is they are a older team, particularly up front. Like I would say their offensive line maybe be one of the best offensive lines we've played against. And then I think they have, for them, in the type of offense they run, I would say they have a generational quarterback. I mean, that he is he is a running fullback that
Right.
can also throw.
He's a physical specimen.
He is a good player,
Yeah.
and so I think all those things came together this particular year. And then I look at Tulane. We're in this era of the teams that have the most NIL money. They are able to go and pick and choose and have better player acquisition. And I think Tulane is certainly one of those teams in our league where they are resourced and they are able to, go and get some players.
When you look at NIL, is there a number that you feel like, okay, we need to be here?
Well, I think in general, if we were in that $1.5 million range, I think that certainly that would be good as it compares to our league.
For football.
Now there's schools that are above that in our league.
Right.
And, it's one of those things that, again, it's not the end-all, be-all. And who knows, I would venture to guess there's a real possibility that the team with the highest NIL might not win the national championship.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't say that it is a sure thing, but I'd also say if you're going to the market to get a quarterback and you have $50,000 to spend on a quarterback or $250,000, you are fishing in a different pond.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as we move forward, understanding that is real. If we go to the Military Bowl and we play an ACC team, they will have a lot more money in NIL than we do. I'm not saying that they're better than us. I'm not saying that we can't win the game, but
what's the reality?
It is the reality.
How do you overcome that?
Well, I think it goes back to what we talked about earlier. I think identifying players at a young age and developing them where you can have a year, kind of like what Army's had, where, they develop some players, you hold on to them, and then you supplement with the right amount of talent to complement. I think that's kind of the recipe moving forward.
John Gilbert, ECU Director of Athletics, is with us. Do you feel like it's been a positive to have Army come in?
Certainly, the academies are a national brand, and anytime they're on TV, people tune in. So
right.
I think from an exposure standpoint, good to have them. Obviously, they're football only, but no, I think it's certainly a good thing for them. And I think just everyone understanding, you are building a roster every year.
Yeah.
Even the players that we develop and grow, man, I'd love to be able to have them 2 or 3 years.
May not, yeah.
But the reality is having a player, developing them the entire time and them staying and graduating is very difficult to do.
Yeah.
I think this year's seniors, someone like a Raji Harris or a Deontay Johnson, they're probably the first group that, came through as a freshman, stayed, developed, played, and now they're leaving. Well, those behind them will have started in the NIL transfer portal era.
Right, yeah.
Raji.
Where they bridged it. Yeah.
Raji didn't start in that era. So I think you're going to see every year moving forward, you're going to see this, building of a roster. We're looking at more of a general manager role to, help, build these rosters on a yearly basis.
Is that someone position that needs to be hired? A GM?
Yes.
Okay.
So, we do have revenue sharing that's coming depending on the outcome of the court case. And so I do think we've got to look more at the NFL model, and that GM not only look at player acquisition, but also making sure we're evaluating and, paying the right players.
Right. With the House decision you're talking about, the rev share, where is that right now? I know we've talked about it before, but it's kind of a good refresher.
Yeah, so the judge is going to rule, I think, sometime this spring, April maybe, and there's a couple components to it. The first component is going back and paying up until 2016 those players that couldn't get NIL back then because it wasn't legal then. And 2016 is really a date the court picked, I guess, on back pay, how far you can go.
Right.
So we'll pay into that $700,000 a year for 10 years. Moving forward, they did roster caps on all the teams. So you've heard, football is at 105, baseball's at 34, etc. So you can choose to add scholarships. You could choose not to add scholarships. And then there is revenue sharing where you'll be able to take a percentage of the revenue and think of the big schools, the Ohio States of the world. They're going to share $22 million of their revenue with student athletes. And that breakdown is 75% football, 15% men's basketball, 15% women's basketball, and 5% other sports.
Right.
And so schools are looking at that now, trying to determine what their salary cap number is and how they allocate those funds to.
And again, because, I think you cannot say these things enough times. It doesn't have to be 22. It could be 10 million. Just given on whoever's situation.
You're going to see disparities across conferences. So, even big conferences, you could see a school going, we're all in, we're going to share $22 million. And then a school not too far down the road in the same league will go, we can only share 10.
Yeah.
There's going to be a difference, and there are going to be tiers of what is shared and how it is shared.
Is there a possibility? I guess there is, because there's no rules at anything. It seems like you could be at 10 this year and maybe go up to 20 the next year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it will fluctuate, and I think for the biggest schools, the cap will increase as revenue increases.
Oh man!
So it is a different model, and it is coming fast, and everyone's trying to evolve to make sure that they can place their school in the very best position they can do that.
All right. We'll pause here for a second, come back after this break, and talk a little more about this. We'll also talk about football, talk some basketball. We'll do all that with John Gilbert, Director of Athletics, with us here on The Patrick Johnson Show.
Download the new IBX Media app now and get the show for your ears and eyes.
Doesn't it look great on me?
This is the Patrick Johnson Show on 94.3 The Game.
All right, John Gilbert with us. We were talking about the House decision. I guess there was a meeting, or at least it's been reported that there was a meeting with ACC presidents and chancellors, same for the Big 12, venture capital infusing money into those situations for future considerations. I know when he was hired, the commissioner of the American talked a little bit about, thinking outside the box, and maybe that's something that the American could do, is, have an infusion of sort of a corporate entity. I don't know. Where is all that as far as it pertains to the American, and is that the only way that certain conferences are going to be able to compete with, say, the Big Ten, SEC?
Yeah, it is very complicated and hard to follow unless you're living it day to day. But I would think in these terms, like for the American and whether venture capital is, a part of the American going forward, is there, I do believe patches on uniforms will be coming soon. So you can see it like in the NBA and NFL, and eventually that's going to make its way to college. Does the conference office manage that with some venture capital money, to infuse cash, and we all have the same corporate logo on? Are there different ways for us to run our business where we can get more venture capital money? And so I think all those discussions are being had, and who knows where we land with that. But I think it is good to have the discussion about it to figure out how we best position ourselves.
As far as here locally, are we going to see a day soon where there'll be corporate logos on the field, corporate logos on the court?
I could see a corporate logo in both of those places. We could have had that this year, but when it was passed and the discussions we were having, I did not want to give it away.
Right.
And so I was pretty, we had a few people approach us and say, hey, I'd like to do it for this much. And I just didn't feel like that was the right thing to do, is just to take a little bit now and be associated, with giving it away, because I do know, like, everyone in town talks. So you give it away.
Right, yeah.
Everybody knows you give it away. I wanted to make sure that we were strategic on where we go with that.
Has there been any thought or discussion of, okay, and I know you'd have to get some clearance with families and that kind of thing to sell naming rights to stadiums and arenas and that sort of thing?
Well, certainly I think we have to look at everything. I saw what they did at NC State with that. I think you have to look at all those things and see, is there a way to better position yourself to drive revenue? We have done a really good job in my tenure here of increasing revenue and private giving significantly, like really all-time best at ECU, but you can't really stop. Like it, we've got to find different venues to do that.
The brick and mortar stuff is the fundraising for that is reached, its conclusion.
Yeah.
How do you steer those efforts now? Where's your focus go?
Well, my focus is really more NIL and revenue sharing. And it's a simple equation. The more capital we have to go out and invest in players, the better we're going to be. And so we need to figure out to get the most capital we can get to go out and invest in players.
How soon will there be the groundbreaking for the indoor practice facility?
I would anticipate us breaking ground March, April, May, somewhere in that range. It'll be put out to bid after the first of the year. We'll do a ceremonial groundbreaking at some point, but I would say actually, dirt moving, tractors, all those things, I would say March, April, May, somewhere in that window.
John Gilbert, ECU Director of Athletics, is with us. How long is the term for the construction?
I think it'll end up being 12 to 15 months.
Okay.
So we'll go a year plus, but feel really good about where the location's going to be. I think we're in a really good place.
With baseball, there's the addition of the locker room and then a fan area on top of that. When does that begin, and how soon?
We are pretty close to closing that project out. We then would take that to Board of Trustees and then Board of Governors, and then go down the same path as the indoor practice facility. I would think that, unless there's a hiccup that I don't see, I think we could, break ground in baseball sometime this summer.
And then you're looking at maybe a year
plus? A year plus, but the indoor building is, basically a covered football field.
Right.
There's not a ton of detail to it.
Right.
Whereas when you go in and renovate, waterproof,
Right, yeah.
and then build, new locker room, new offices. It is quite detailed.
But you'll still be operational in the facility.
Yeah, you'll still be able to play games. I would anticipate, players and coaches maybe being, in a trailer or,
Gotcha.
temporary.
Right. Kind of
space for them, but still being able to play games.
Is there anything more that you feel like needs to be done to Minji's?
Yes.
It's a bit of a loaded question.
Yeah. There's still a lot to Minji's. Seating wise, I'd love to do chairbacks on the other side. It's. When you look at all these projects, like we did the seating and the lighting last year at Minji's, and it was over $1 million, privately raised. And so whatever you do, you have to go out and raise it. And, besides Minji's, we need to redo our teams building, our Olympic sports teams. They are crunched for space.
Right.
That is a project that we have to look at as well. But all these take capital, and then you also have the NIL piece that is real. Is
with the tower, is there anything that's tied up in that hinders borrowing? I mean, I've you hear so many different things. I mean, again, I think it's good to kind of set the record straight in a public forum on some of this because
we don't have. Capacity to bond right now is what you're saying.
Right.
So, typically when you go bond something, and it's really not any different than your house.
Right.
If we decide, hey, we're going to build this new field, or we're going to redo the team's building, and it costs $20 million to do that, you're basically, raising some for a down payment, then you're going to a bank and you're paying monthly payments on the building. Well, you go, well, that's easy. Why don't you just do that? Well, the reality is that monthly payment is due every month, and you have to have a revenue stream that's coming in that can make that monthly payment.
Right.
And so indoor practice facility, fully funded, cash. We do have payments, but we have donors that have made pledges on it. Same thing with baseball. And so right now under the current structure, we have to fundraise for everything that we have.
All right, let's get to on the field.
Yep.
Blake Harrell last week had the interim tag removed. What led you to that decision?
Well, we made a change mid-year, and I really, at the time the change was made and we entrusted Blake with the interim role, I really never envisioned, the place that we would get to today.
Mm-hmm.
But I also was able to interview him every day, by watching the things that he was doing and his interactions with the players and his interactions with the coaches and, just all the people in our building. Obviously, we were winning games, and it's really hard to win games.
Right.
Like everybody, they say, "Oh, it's this team. We should beat them every time."
Right.
Well,
doesn't work like that.
Well, it doesn't, because everybody's investing. Okay, and because you see a team, win or lose 3, 4, or 5 games. The Tulsa game's a great example. Everybody thought we were going to go out there and win 44-0. Well, it doesn't work like that. Like, you don't get the same team each week.
Right.
They're 18 to 22 years old. They have a lot of things going on in their life. You're not getting the same team, because everybody would go, we are getting the same team we saw against FAU. You're not getting that team every week.
Right.
You're getting whatever
whatever that day's version
is going to be. And so I look at how we overcame in that game. didn't play great, but we found a way to win. And it's, again, everybody's investing. I don't care who in the league you talk about. I would tell you, hey, you don't realize what they're investing to try to win games. So I saw that, and then I saw obviously the game at North Texas,
right,
where, again, not playing well in the first half, and then we went on to win the game in convincing manner. And when you look at the full body of work and finishing 5th in our league,
which is upper third.
Well,
of the conference.
5 out of 14 teams.
Right.
There are a lot of teams behind us that are trying and would love to be talking about playing in a bowl game.
Right.
And so when you make a coaching change, you are disrupting the entire staff. Everybody, would typically think, let's go get a new coach, but I want to keep this person or that person. It doesn't work like that. Like when a new coach comes in, they want the autonomy to go hire their person.
Right.
So
had you hired someone, the idea of, well, John David Baker could stay? No, probably not.
Any coach.
Or that Blake Harrell could go back and be the defensive coach.
Right.
Yeah.
Or any staff member.
Right.
That really is not the reality to the way that works. And I felt on our staff and our roster, because, we do have a lot of good young players that we have developed and we want to retain. When you bring in a new staff, and you can look at the number of schools that have made changes where their rosters are all going into the portal.
Yeah.
It is very difficult. And I felt like where and how we finished, that, maintaining the stability in the manner in which we did, I felt like that was for the best for ECU.
You obviously talked to other candidates, or at least representation from other candidates. How far or serious did you get with any of these other candidates?
Well, the positive is I talked to a lot of people, a lot of coaches, and our job is very well thought of nationally. Like that was. I knew that I know it's a good job, right? Because I'm here every day, but also refreshing the number of people that I talk to, the number of respected head coaches that I talk to that said, man, that is a really good job for these reasons, continued to keep me encouraged about, where our program is headed. But I felt like we landed in the right spot with Blake.
Right, absolutely. and I do agree with you there. Did it get real serious, though, with anybody, or was that a balancing thing? Because, in a sense, Blake had emerged as a candidate, and a serious candidate.
Well, I started the process, pretty quickly and was going through it. So I'll just leave it at I talked to a lot of qualified people, but I'm encouraged about where we landed and excited about what the future is going to bring.
John David Baker was on a multiple year, 2-year deal.
Yeah.
Is there any movement towards extending that, or how does he factor into this as the offensive coordinator?
Certainly we'll work with Blake. I know the two of them have a great relationship, and John David has reiterated to me multiple times that he really likes it here. So obviously we want him to stay and, continue to lead our offense.
So basketball last night, maybe a little bit of a step back, tough loss. And I think, I think we're all still kind of digesting yesterday in a way. Just haven't seen a lot of basketball over the years. You have games where not only you're not shooting it well, but you might be doing other things well. You might get some bounces. Last night, it seemed like East Carolina got no breaks, didn't shoot it well, and just had some miscommunications on defense. In other words, it was sort of the imperfect storm.
Yeah, it was very disappointing for a lot of reasons. We didn't we didn't play at the level anyone would like, and players and coaches. I know that they were extremely frustrated with what last night looked like. I know that they can regroup. There's a lot of basketball left.
Sure.
And I think it just goes back to, and again, I am not making an excuse when I say this. Our expectations are high for all our programs. You don't get the same team every night. And last night, we got a version that we were all not happy with.
When you look at a game like that, that's a rivalry game, and by all accounts, that rivalry is going to continue. I think it should. I think it's a good thing to play home and home and play Wilmington. But that's, again, a rival. You have football losing to App State and, in conference Charlotte. When you lose those kind of games, you don't want to lose. But you're not. It takes a special season to win every single game or the vast majority of your games. But does that put a little extra? I mean, do you get your text and your inbox blown up when you do lose to those in-state schools?
Yeah.
Who in those cases, the idea seems to be, well, we have more of this and more of that and that sort of thing.
Yeah, it certainly burns me inside, but probably more so from what I put on myself, not from outside. Like, certainly I hear from outside people that, terrible loss and all the things we need to do. Doesn't compare close to what I put on myself and how I feel internally. And know that we've got a lot of opportunity to, go out, because I do think, after the game the other night, we've got to go prove it on the floor for our fan base. When you look,
We talked about kind of the idea of an NIL where it ideally would be with football. With basketball, that seems to be a growth sport at East Carolina. I mean, you can obviously achieve things that have never been achieved here. But what would it take, in your opinion, in an NIL budget to be able to put out the type of program that?
I think the top teams in our league are certainly over $1 million in NIL and basketball. Like, we're not remotely close to that.
Right. But again, trying to approach that number, I guess.
Obviously that's an aspirational,
right? Yeah.
Goal. The more we get, the better opportunity coaches have to go and have player acquisition. So we continue to try to grow that.
With
number.
football, it's a cultural, a huge piece of the community, huge piece of the university. Baseball's had its success. With basketball, is it chicken or egg?
I wish I had the answer to that. We continue to invest a lot of dollars into it because I fully believe we can win in basketball at ECU. I think we have the infrastructure to do it. Now, we don't have the history and the tradition. And so, again, when you're on the recruiting trail, we have to overcome that. And how do you overcome it? You might have to pay more. That's just the reality of it. We don't have the tradition of other schools in basketball, and so again, I fully believe we can get there. We have the infrastructure. We're in a basketball state, but we haven't gotten there.
Right.
Or very few times have we gotten there.
So when you see a lot of the coaching changes in the conference, I mean, these are all schools that we could say East Carolina is comparable to. App State also would fall into that. And I know every situation is very different, but there are certain circumstances where guys weren't given a whole lot of time. Is there more pressure to win on these coaches now because of all the things we've talked about here for the last several minutes?
Well, I think that certainly the way the infrastructure has changed and the ability to flip a roster every year, you have the ability to change quickly. It's not like the old days where
you got to build it.
You got to build it, and hey, these 2 kids or 5 kids or 10 kids are transferring, and they got to go sit out a year. It's pretty much, hey, I could go to a different school every year. And so I think that has probably created some of this. And then you're paying players.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're getting paid. I think that has created this as well.
When you look at the next big challenge just for the NCAA, what does the next couple years look like?
Well, we are still rudderless, in my opinion, on the direction in which we are all going. And I think this House settlement is going to create some tiers.
Mm-hmm.
So I think moving forward, all things are not going to be created equal. And if you look at the history of the NCAA and the NCAA rule book, it is that rule book was so thick because of competitive equity. They wanted competitive equity.
Right.
Well, you can throw that out the door now. Like there is not going to be competitive equity. You are going to line up against the team where, you have, 1 or 2 million in NIL, and you're playing a team with 15 million in NIL.
Well, and also you'll line up against teams that have no money.
100%
in NIL.
Yeah. Now, very few of those.
Right.
But absolutely, you're going to line up against some teams that
might have $500,000.
Might have just a little bit.
Right.
And so you're going to see competitive inequity moving forward. There's just no way around it.
Does that resonate on the field and on the court? I mean, to a point where it really cheapens the product.
Well, I don't want to say cheapen it, but if you look at what's going on with the playoff and who's where and all those things, it is a little bit chaotic. And I think it's chaotic because if you look at, let's call it player or talent acquisition, the players are in control. If they want to leave, we could sign a player and they enroll in January and they can leave in May and go to another school because they.
Well, I mean, it happened. Yeah, in football this past
year.
Yeah.
So those things can happen. You're going to see these wild swings like a Florida State who went 13-0,
and then 2 wins,
and now they're struggling, and they had a lot of players that they had to replace, and they go to the portal, and you miss on 1 or 2, and then you look up and you go, oh my gosh, how does this happen? It's going to happen very easily. This coming year, there will be another Florida State.
Right.
I don't know who it is, but it's going to be a team in a similar fashion.
All right, one quick break, come back, couple more things I want to ask John Gilbert with us here on the Patrick Johnson Show.
You ready for this?
Oh, I'm very ready. Okay, ready?
You ready?
Streaming to the world at 943thegame.com. This is the Patrick Johnson Show. Now in all his glory, here's the P-Man.
I can't thank John Gilbert enough for taking this hour with us here. We really appreciate it. And we held you over because I gotta grill you on scheduling. I gotta grill you on that for football.
My
inquiring minds want to know.
Yes. What next year? So we open with NC State in Raleigh, Campbell at home, at Coastal Carolina, and then BYU at home.
Okay.
So it is a challenging non-conference schedule.
It is. What about with West Virginia pulling up stakes?
Yeah, nothing at this point. That year we have Appalachian at home. That's not the start of the season. North Carolina Central at home,
Okay.
Appalachian at home, and then we actually are going to move this game up a week. Is Old Dominion.
Okay.
And I think Old Dominion, I can't remember where that game is. I want to say it's on the road again because I think this game, don't hold me to this I don't have it right in front of me, but I think this past game was the last in the series.
Before the new contract.
Before the new
Right,
contract, and we started a new one. So in 2026,
Right.
it's Central Appalachian
Old Dominion.
at Old Dominion need a game.
Okay, how do you get the game?
Well, I've been talking to a lot of Power 4 schools about a game, probably going to be a bye game. The only way we would get a home and home if there's some sort of leverage. And then I also want to be careful who that is, just to be candid. Like, I'm not really a huge fan of putting our guys up at a, huge against a huge NIL team.
Yeah. Right.
But I also want it to be meaningful for the fans, which would be good. And then trying to think what else we've done.
Well, how far out are you working? I mean, you have these things pop up like 26.
The West Virginia game is really all that we're working on at this point. I don't think we need a game until like the late 20s, 28, 29, and that might be an FCS game. So we're booked for a while.
Okay. Do you see more of these bye game opportunities in the future, or do we have to see how things play out?
I think how it will depend on how they play out. I'm all for playing them. Obviously, they make sense from a financial standpoint. You just have to be really careful from a competitive standpoint.
All right. Pilk, are we done, Pilk? We good?
Yep, we're good.
John says we're done, so we're done.
He gave the
thumbs
up.
Gilbert said we're done with this. We don't need to do any more. All right. Thank you for coming in. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
All right. We'll have Joe Giglio with us tomorrow. We'll talk the recruiting day and all of that, but I wanted to spend as much time with John today, and we'll get into all of that tomorrow. Have a great rest of your evening.